I was fortunate enough to have a family of musicians that had me interested in music when I was very, very young. My mother was a music teacher, and she started me playing piano when I was the age of 4. And she continually expressed her want for me to remain in music all throughout my education in school, which I did. And I played many instruments back then. Eventually my first experiences with rock and roll was that I was a drummer. And but I had lots of music ideas in my mind and never really had a chance to bring those ideas to fruition through the drums, because drums are beating on things, not necessarily writing music. And so I started messing around with trying to write rock and roll tunes on piano, and that really wasn't working out for me as well either. And I realized that maybe I should traverse into other instruments, and that's how I got led into playing bass guitar and regular guitar. And I was fortunate to have a stepbrother, David, who actually taught me my first song on acoustic guitar, which was Hey Joe. I believe it was written by Bob Dylan, but I was familiar with the Jimi Hendrix version, of course, And I was really influenced early on by, my early days. I think the first rock and roll band that I ever really got into was the Beatles and the Monkees also. But you got to remember, I was born in 1957, so pop culture was, we're talking Chuck Berry, Bill Haley and the Comets type stuff, really old school rock and roll. And a lot of the stuff that, became the foundations of hard rock and heavy metal weren't even happening yet. And as time progressed on, when bands like Black Sabbath and Led Zeppelin came about, and Blue Cheer or Pink Floyd, things just, I immediately was sucked into those types of genres of music. And I kept on working towards that sort of space rock type sound at first, and finally got really serious about guitar somewhere around 1976, 77. And that's when I put Manilla Road together. It was in 1977, and it was basically just myself, Scott Park, and Ben Munkers on drums. Scott's little brother Robert played rhythm guitar with us for a while. None of us really knew exactly what we were doing. They were all sort of starting on their instruments, and I wasn't very good at guitar yet. And we just started, putting songs together and trying to do our thing. And it continued to evolve for a while. But we had some early misfortune. Our sound and light man got electrocuted to death, and not at one of our shows. It was at his workplace, but it was pretty devastating to my first drummer, Ben Munkers, and he decided he couldn't go on anymore, so he quit. And we went through a couple other drummers. Ended up with Miles Sipe for a while, which we recorded our first demo recording with, which was the Underground tapes that have recently come out on High Roller Records. And those recordings were the very first time that we'd ever been in a studio. And but Miles wasn't really working out for us either, and so I actually got rid of him, and that's when I signed Rick Fisher on with us. And we immediately after, Rick hadn't been with us for much more than about 2 or 3 months, and we went into the studio in the winter of '79 and started working on our first full-length album, Invasion. And this is, I guess this is where it all started for us as far as the actual public eye, knowing about Manilla Road to some degree or another.
This is called The Empire.
This was way back when. It jars my memory, to see me looking that young, Rick, and although Rick sort of looks the same even nowadays, it's sort of funny, and Scott Park, of course. But we had a really good time in the studio, but we were very unknowing of what was going on in the industry. We didn't really know how to work in the studio yet. I mean, I'd only worked in the studio one time before, and Scott had only been in there once before. The studio we were working in, Miller's studio in Newton, Kansas, was even, it was a pretty new studio at the time too, so they were sort of learning at the same time that we were. And it was a sort of a family effort, to claw our way up out of the Midwest, where there really wasn't a music industry in the U.S. there. We were always told if you're going to, amount to anything, you have to move to New York, you have to move to California. And, for some reason, I was bound and determined to prove that philosophy wrong, that you can create cool stuff no matter where you're at. That's the way I looked at it. And but we did that album, and there's some parts of that album that are really cool. The Empire is still one of my favorite songs off of that. It's a really big, long epic, and probably our first song that we really put together that was a huge epic type thing, and even to this day I still like playing the song, so it says something for that. Far Side of the Sun on there, which appeared on our underground demo and appeared on this album, and then we did it again on the second album. It seemed like the song kept on changing and evolving, so we kept on putting it out again and again at first. And we had my favorite song besides The Empire off of Invasion, I would say, would be Cat and Mouse. I really like the bridge section in the middle of it. It's just very cool space rock. And that's pretty much what we were back then. We were sort of like space metal. And but as we progressed towards our next album, we actually recorded a full album that turned out to be the Mark of the Beast album later on. But we weren't completely happy with it. We thought that the recordings didn't really sound that much like the band live, and part of that started here on the Invasion album because, like I said, the studio was really young, and they decided that we should record through inline analog processors, And so we didn't really use amps on this album. It was processors fed into the board and everything. And we were feeling like, well, it doesn't really sound like us live as much as it should. And when we did the second album, sort of the same way. And we decided that we just don't really like the sound because we wanted it to sound like us with our amplifiers. And so we started doing demos, and that's where the songs Venusian Sea and Time Trap and Aftershock came from. And those are done with amplifiers and in the studio, and more like us playing live. And that was feeling more like the right direction for us. So that's when we sort of scrapped all of that material and just put it on a shelf and took it as a learning experience. And then we moved on to record this album.